Welcome back to another episode of Keiko Talks. In this episode, we're discussing the business of character development. Not your standard brick and mortar, but equally as important to keeping your personal and emotional economy intact. In this episode, we'll be discussing how to use discernment to keep our lives as peaceful and as chaos-free as possible. Let's get into this chat. All right, so I am actually pretty excited to talk about this topic today. So we're talking about character development today. And so how we got here, well, I guess we'll get into how we came up with this topic in the first place. So Courtney, you go first, and then I'll tell my story about how we got to this topic.
Yeah, so we got, I think we were just having like a normal conversation we normally have. Mm-hmm. And I was like saying something. I was like, I'm not in the business of character development, meaning I'm not invested in helping someone who's not willing to help themselves evolve, right? Basically talking about how people who are okay being in whatever toxic space they're in, if they're okay being there, I'm not in the business of helping you get out. I'm not going to spend my time, my energy, helping you evolve because it's not my job.
Exactly.
And so we were discussing that and just some recent, situations, because Catelyn and I have both been making some pretty big transitions in our lives recently. So some of the big transitions we've been making have put us in contact with new people who, have been, in different ways have their character clashing, or there's needed to be some character evolution. So, dealing with these new people, new energies coming into our lives, we were like, you have to be able to set that boundary and say, am I going to be a part of this person's evolution, or am I hands off and I'm not in the business of character development? So that's kind of where it really started from.
Yep. Yeah. So like Courtney said, we had that conversation and Courtney made the line, I'm not in the business of character development. I thought it was pretty profound, honestly, because to go back a little bit, you're in high school and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be an adult because like people aren't going to act like this. And you get to the real world and you realize that it's basically
like high school.
It's not even like high school. It is high school on an amplified level dealing with adults, right? And so while it's not your responsibilities to develop someone's character or help them develop their character, it either is, the parents who are molding a child into the adult they should become, or you have to figure it out yourself, right? But, as adults, if you don't have the self awareness and the ability to analyze your behaviors that you're either, lacking or not lacking, then it's hard for you to get to a place where you can change your character or evolve as an individual, right? So,
yeah. And like this kind of goes back to our mental health series that we did a while ago on being emotionally mature. And really going through the process of analyzing your trauma and healing from your trauma and becoming an emotionally mature person, because when you aren't that, it's quite obvious to the people around you. You might think you're hiding something, you might be trying to project something else, but people know when somebody is mature or not, when their character has evolved enough or not. And you can usually tell, because if people don't want to be around you, that's a telltale sign.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Which, like, I think also, too, the reason why that person doesn't understand that is because of the lack of self-awareness, though. So, which goes into character development. You know what I mean? You have to be on the level of self-awareness to realize that you may be, a toxic individual to be around. Maybe you don't have the best attributes to contribute to other people who are around you, or maybe you are withdrawing from,
or you handle situations and conflict in a poor way, like you lash out rather than calmly speaking about things or finding ways to rectify situations. Like you just, there's so many different ways that someone can be toxic, as we now know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was thinking, like, And, for our topic today, what we're actually talking about is how to sort of defend yourself against people who might be toxic in your life, because it's not always our job, or it's really never our job, in my opinion, to offer someone the tools to develop. Like, the best example I can think is, like, people used to romanticize like thug love and struggle love, like going through hell and back with somebody just to like get to the other side or whatever. We're basically saying, like, you don't have to do that. 2022, this new era, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to stick through somebody's BS to help them evolve. That's not our responsibility, especially as women.
Exactly.
It's not our responsibility. If somebody isn't a grown adult and can't recognize their trauma and figure it out for themselves, it's nobody else's responsibility. If that means you have to be hands off and they just have to fall flat on their behind and figure it out themselves, oh well. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed, yeah.
It's like, it's just important, really, that you set the boundary for yourself. And it's like, it's not that everyone's evolving all the time, and we are personally evolving as people too. So it's not to say that you can't ever help somebody out, but you have to know if the person you're trying to help out is toxic and bringing you down as collateral damage. You know what I mean? That's when it gets, you have to reevaluate.
Absolutely. I remember what I was going to say. So I was also going to say too that me personally, I don't see anything wrong with helping certain people who also want to help themselves. You know what I mean? There's a huge difference between helping someone who doesn't want help, or who doesn't want to figure out something that is more productive or positive for them. They have to want to do it for themselves first before you can ever attempt to help someone else. So there is a distinction between that. However, it is not your responsibility to provide either, whether they want help or they don't want help. So if you want to, out of the kindness of your heart, that is your choice. But, absolutely no one is in the business of character development. The only person I would say is responsible for that is parents, because that is part of your job as a parent to hopefully make this child a productive citizen in America. But even that, the adult has to take a level of accountability in the decisions and choices that they make that has gotten them to being a toxic individual as well. So,
exactly. And a lot of times, we're at the age now where people are really just acting out childhood trauma. Like, that's the age we're at now. Like, most people, when they come to you or when you interact with them and they have an issue, or they are just a difficult person to deal with, something's usually deeper there. You know what I mean? So that's something to understand too, is their behavior is coming out of something, which actually helps me. That helps me be able to detach easier. I'm like, I don't know what hurt you or who hurt you or how that happened. And unfortunately, I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's not my responsibility because I just met you 2 weeks ago. So it's not that's not, you know what I mean? And you're acting out and you're hitting me now. So that's like the end of that interaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think,
but that comes with a level of self-awareness as well. You know what I mean? Being able to know that, hey, this trauma is because of X, Y, and Z. And this is, I wouldn't say necessarily who I take it out on, but if you just met this person a week ago and they're already like hostile, then it's, you got to know where to put that anger or aggressive tendencies, toxic tendencies.
The thing is, there's people who are walking around hostile with everyone because of whatever they don't have healed. And they think that they're like, nobody can see it. Like, we see your anger. Other people see your behavior. You're not like hiding something from people. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
So we he said, the issue comes for me is like, it's fine if you have those issues and you really go over in your corner and you handle that within yourself, or you lash out with yourself. I'm not saying hurt yourself. I would never advocate hurting yourself, but if your trauma is self-contained, that's fine. Handle that over there. The issue to me comes when people externalize, which most people do. A lot of people externalize, and they go and lash out on other people. because they haven't
Yeah.
handled whatever's inside of them. That's the issue. And that's why it's important to be able to recognize people's behavior and set boundaries, because maybe it has nothing to do with you. It's probably got everything to do with mom or dad. We don't know. But
yeah, that's very true. I will also say too that me personally, while I don't think it should be pushed onto others either, I don't think it should also be kept internal either, because I think at some point it's going to boil over into the external and become something that's outward. So if you really have to deal with it internally as well too, like that's not the answer either.
Yeah,
So.
well, what I mean by internal is not that you should bottle it up. I'm not saying bottle it up, because what I'm saying is you have to be the main steward, the main caretaker, if you will, of your own trauma. You can't
agreed.
put that on somebody else. It's nobody else's responsibility to heal you. So what I mean by like go handle that yourself means if you know something's not right with how I feel about XYZ, seek out the help, the resources from the appropriate people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people do is they think, oh, I'll just get into a relationship with somebody, or I'll get a friend, or I'll get, and this will solve it. And it's like, your friend in a relationship, they're looking for you to be the best version of yourself, and you're not that yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Not that I think people should bottle things up, because I think bottling things up is what ultimately hurts you too. But you have to go to the appropriate resources to handle that stuff. And there are appropriate resources out there. People just try to, in my experience, people have always tried to like externalize it by reaching out to somebody else who's not the appropriate place. Innocent bystander, meaning somebody who, a potential mate, a potential friend, a coworker, a neighbor, those are not necessarily the appropriate people. Just because they are people does not mean that you can dump that on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Courtney, whose job do you think it is to teach, I guess, character development?
I mean, I think it starts with parenting, like you said. It absolutely starts with parenting, because that's the first, group of people who are taking care of you. That's the first moral compass you develop. That's who you form your attachment styles to. That's who usually has an influence over your physical health, mental health, emotional health. That's your first and biggest basis of defense, I would say. Or not defense, but character development. That's who needs to really start it. So parents with their children.
Agreed.
But I agree. I think it's unfortunately harder to develop character if your parents are doing, a lackluster job or a poor job of developing character. It's harder when you get to be 18, 19, 20, 21, or however old, and then now you're thinking, do I have the character that I need to become a healthy adult? It's harder.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It definitely is like it's like building a house, right? If your foundation is not rock solid, right? It's going to be hard to build a stable house on top of that foundation. So the same thing with character development. If you don't have a stable foundation, then you really don't have the tools and the resources for self-awareness, to analyze, this is where this is coming from. The root of the problem that I have with, maybe getting friends and maintaining friendships is because of this, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. So if you don't have that fundamental foundation, it really is going to be a struggle, and then you also have the idea that it is someone else's job,
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And, this actually makes me think of a story. So like a little story time is like, I didn't realize this until much later, after I started doing my own reflection on my own life. But somebody, this is again a non-consensual situation, because I did not consent to this interaction. But one time back in college, this person who I was friends with at the time, like, was doing some film project. And I was obviously super into film. So I was like, yeah, sure, you've helped me out on my projects, I'll help you out on yours. I go, and he's like, okay, we're going to have this meeting to like discuss, the film, basically a pre-production meeting, which is standard in the film industry. If you don't know, you meet before you actually start filming to to discuss what you're going to film and how you can film it, right? So I show up to this meeting, quote, I'm in quotation marks here. I'm the only person there, okay? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, so it's like, are other people coming to the meeting? Like, you said you sent this to multiple people, blah, 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 like, whatever. And I'm the only one who showed up. And I was like, okay, I mean, but I knew the person pretty well, or I thought at the time, I knew them pretty well. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so, like, you know, where's everybody else? And then, like, instead of actually having a meeting discussing, you know, pre-production plan, this person, like, emotionally dumps, like, all the stuff about whatever, some interaction he recently had with his girlfriend, like, coming back into his life, and, like, and just, like, dumps all this stuff. And I'm like, first off, I didn't consent to this. Like, if you wanted to talk about these emotional whatever, you needed to start the conversation by saying, hey, can I talk to you about XYZ? You don't get somebody under a pretense to come and dump. I had something else to do that day, right? And that's not to say that I don't have compassion for that, but, like, you don't go and dump, you know?
Nor am I your therapist, you know? Like,
and that's the other thing, too, is a lot of people just, like, especially, unfortunately, men, because they don't have, in male groups, a lot of times they can't go to their friends and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this emotional issue. So, like, when they dump and you're dumping about your girlfriend, who I really don't know, and, like, you know, all I can really say is there, I hope it gets better. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, you're looking for something from me that I don't have to give you. You know what I mean? And you didn't even prepare me to be able to even be in that space. Like, I actually got me there under false pretenses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's annoying. Yeah,
that's annoying, and it's like, it's like that person was looking for some sort of, like, in my opinion, for somebody to kind of, like, check their behavior or, like, offer them some advice on something. And I'm like, you can't just. That's an example of, like, how people just externalize things and don't consider what somebody else might be thinking or feeling in that situation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
Yeah, no, 100%.
And that was the other person. If you listen to her consent, that was the same person who used other false pretenses to get me to come over to their house too. So this person, and I didn't recognize it at the time because I'm thinking this person's a friend. Like, I'm thinking, oh, it's like friend. You know, like I said, I knew where my boundaries stood, so I was never going there with them because that was never my interest. But, you know, when someone's just a friend, or kind of like in college, you'd be like, you're friends with someone, but you don't hang out with them every day. You know, it was that kind of situation. And so I was like, I didn't really think twice about it. And then I'm like, this person used basically used like we were saying, predatory methods of getting someone to be around them in an emotionally vulnerable way, rather than just communicating clearly what they desired. And the reason I know why they didn't is because I would have said no. I would have been like, no. You know what I mean? Like, both instances. And that's not to be rude, but I just would have been like, we don't have that level of relationship, and you're trying to make this level of relationship before you even, but we're not there, and you're trying to make this something, and it's not.
Yeah,
so
I feel that.
A little rant, but it's like, that's just a clear moment to me when this person was looking for me or somebody else to help them evolve or help them, you know, plan next steps. And it's like, you have to go to the appropriate sources.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also too, like, for some reason, I don't understand it. I've been to a therapist before, and I absolutely loved going. It was actually really, well, you know, in the time I didn't necessarily enjoy going, but looking back now, I really enjoyed going because it was a non-biased individual providing me some actually helpful stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, like, you know, seek out a therapist. I know, you know, it's easier said than done. You got to find somebody that you kind of, like, mesh with, maybe, or affordability.
Exactly.
But look into therapy. It's actually really beneficial. Also, too, therapy is an ongoing thing. It's not, you know,
or support.
It's not something that, or support groups too. Yeah, but therapy is an ongoing thing. It's not something you, like, start when you you had some trauma and then you stop because you feel like you've healed. Healing is an ongoing process, and so is reaching that point, which could be through therapy. So if you can afford it and you have the time and all that good stuff like that, go to therapy. It'll definitely help your character develop. I can say that.
Exactly, yeah. And a therapist is an appropriate resource because a therapist has the tools to, and the medical background and credentials to really help you understand why you behave the way you behave.
Yeah.
Your friend, not saying that they don't have that ability, but like your friend, 9 times out of 10, probably, if they're not a therapist themselves already, they're probably not going to be able to give you the same level of tools.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely not be able to medically diagnose you if that's what needs to happen. They like, so it's not saying you can't talk to your friends and can't release and vent to your friends, especially trusted friends. It's just you have to know when you are consistently dumping on somebody, or when you set up situations, like in my case, that situation I was talking about, where you set up situations just to release and the other person is not aware. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think you made a key distinction, though. There's a difference between venting and dumping.
Exactly.
Venting is like, maybe you're just sharing...
letting smoke out.
Yeah. Like you're just like something heated and you're just letting it go. You know what I mean? But you're not looking for that person to be the answer to your problem and or provide you the answer to the problem. Venting is just, offloading, right?
Yeah.
Which I think you still should ask for consent to do that with your friends, family, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of venting, you have to then do your own healing and evolving and analysis of your behavior and that maybe whatever the situation was. Versus dumping is you dump all of this to get answers and or you're looking for someone to be the answer. Yeah. And so that's never okay, in my opinion. So
yeah, no, I feel that. And not to keep going about this situation, but now that you bring up the difference between venting and dumping, I actually would have been okay with that situation if it was like venting, but it became like, what should I do? And I'm like, I don't know. First off, I'm not in a relationship with you and I don't know your girlfriend, but like, given what you told me, I don't know what to tell you to do. I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not qualified for that. And I'm not.
And I feel like most people usually have an answer
what
they want to do. Most people usually have an answer to what they want to do. I feel like they want validation by you saying what they want you to say most of the time. Yeah. And so that's not... First of all, I'm nobody's yes man. I tell you, Exactly. So you're probably going to be disappointed in my answer for one. But that's not my job either.
Exactly. Yeah. And you certainly don't construct a situation where somebody is like sort of trapped into like they're there. You know what I mean? It's like it's like you see it's like when you see people who are like having emotional outbursts on the street or whatever, you're like, I guess I should help you, or like, you know what I mean? It's like it's that kind of thing, but it's also like I have my own stuff going on too. Like, it's like you don't corner people into being your emotional support. Okay. That's,
sure.
We don't get anything else from this episode. Know that. You don't corner people. Same way you ask consent for other interactions, you ask consent to discuss something with somebody because you don't know what they're going through either,
Agreed. Yeah. So I'm going to share, I guess, like something that I'm experiencing now that kind of pertains. So as of now, I work in corporate America in healthcare. And I was doing a temporary assignment at first, and then I got hired on as a full-time employee with this company, working under the same department, but in a different area. So I've only been there for a couple weeks now, but when I tell you it has been a headache, a struggle, it has been eye-opening to say the least, right? Courtney knows a lot about this because I complain. I vent about it a lot because a lot of things are happening. But for one person we'll talk about, I have a manager who is very interesting, to say the least. She's very she's one of those individuals where it's, let me just throw my job up on you kind of people. Which I mean, I guess that's just her character. I don't know what to attribute that to, but it's like throwing off things that are really not an entirely different person's responsibility on the me and another girl who are in a different area. And so, it's like, how do I maintain my character when, approaching this individual about their character in the instance of corporate America? And how do you navigate that world, but while being professional,
Yeah.
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 Though it's not my job to, first of all, do her job or help her develop her character as a new manager. She's never been a manager before, I don't believe. And so she is, it's just interesting, which I know she has to learn, but it's just like, you're coming in, which she started after me during my temp assignment. So she really has no idea about the department. And I understand getting her educated on the department and whatnot, but she's coming in hot and heavy with the demands that are not necessarily one's job for a lot of different people.
Yeah. Managers be like that, honestly. Corporate American managers be like some of the most inept people.
And the funny thing is, how did you become a manager? It's just mind blowing to me. They know how to pick the trash. I'm telling you.
I don't think they choose managers based off of people who are competent. Actually, I don't think corporate America chooses anybody who's competent. I think they choose people who are invested in the corporate system.
For sure,
people who will sit down, shut up, go along with the flow, and even enforce, corporate culture, corporate rules, corporate finances, whatever. People who are like basically up their behind is who they promote.
100% agree. I definitely think they are looking for the yes man when they're providing these roles. They're not looking for anyone who is going to be quote unquote liberal, go against the status quo, be different. No, they want. They don't want that at all.
Usually,
yeah.
I remember my job. One of the most annoying things that happened is one of the people who called me the C word at my job. I've already told the story about being harassed, but one of the men who called me the C word at my job was like promptly promoted, like maybe a month or two later, to like a higher position. And I was like, this is the kind of person you promote. We know where your sensibilities are. Where you?
Yeah, they're nowhere.
Yeah, they're nowhere. Seriously.
Yeah. So how do you think that, like, for that scenario, how do you think you make the boundary known that you're not in the business of character development in a professional arena?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. In the professional arena, I think you really just have to continue to set boundaries pretty much all the time and say, if somebody's trying to, again, emotionally corner you or professionally corner you and try to get you to help them evolve in some way that they should be able to do themselves, you set a boundary and say, nope, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm sorry. I have, you know what I mean? You can use even corporate terms like, what's the corporate word? Like, I'm not going to be able to, something along the lines of like, I'm not going to be able to help you with that. That's outside of my wheelhouse. Like, that's not something that I'm personally capable of, you know what I mean? Try XYZ. You know what I mean? Like, that's, there's very corporate terms to set boundaries. And I think that's probably your best friend when it comes to that, because people will try it,
Absolutely. And the thing is, with this individual, I have tried setting the boundaries, but the boundary was gaslighted, to say the least, and ignored. And so I feel like that's corporate America in general. To me, is going to continue to push your buttons and constantly put you to the test, mentally, physically, emotionally, right? So I know that's coming from corporate America, and I expect that from corporate America. However, personally, when you work hard to create boundaries and get to the point where you're able to create boundaries and enforce boundaries, it's just like a slap in the face. You know what I mean? That these individuals don't respect them yet, let alone they don't know where you come from, so they don't understand that. But it's ironic because they won't want their boundaries to be pushed as a manager. You know what I mean? I'm a manager now, but they love to push on yours.
One thing about corporate America, they're going to push a boundary.
Oh yeah, and they're going to keep, and it's not just one. They're going to keep pushing them. They're going to see a way to get you to do what they want you to do. 1,000%.
Or to explode, or to have whatever reaction they want you to have, they will push it. I'm telling you, I'm like, corporate America is actual hell. I don't that was really next to my father. I would say that job was one of the worst experiences of my life. Absolutely, hands down. I don't bat an eye even saying that. That was one of the worst experiences of my life.
I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't say this is the worst experience because I worked for another medical facility with a doctor in Monk's Corner, and working for her was like, that was hell. That was literally hell. Not only mentally was it hell, it was literally like physically, because I was just doing so much. She wanted me to be everywhere and do what, exactly what she wanted me to do. Be a mind reader, basically, which that's one thing I make everyone aware of, that I am not a mind reader. If you don't tell me what you want, then I'm not going to do it. But she, which, and also she also lacked respect for other people because she was a doctor. But let's be honest here, doctor, God himself, whoever else you want to say, high-ranking people, president, doesn't matter. You have to treat people with respect in order to get respect. That's how my brain works, right? And if you're not going to give it to me, I'm not going to give it to you. You're not going to be talking to me any kind of way, whether you're a doctor or you're not a doctor. I will definitely tell you, please don't speak to me that way. I am not a child. I would appreciate if you can talk to me like a normal human being and we can move forward. Other than that, we can't.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's setting a boundary of like,
it is for sure.
And this is how you treat me, or we don't do it at all.
Exactly. Yeah. But the thing is, with that doctor, she was very offended by me setting a boundary. And she was very upset about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She ended up firing me. Let's be honest here. Because I set a boundary. Yeah.
Sometimes getting fired is the best thing, because it's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Physically, this is taking a toll on me, mentally, emotionally.
Well, before she fired me and I had that talk with her, I already knew that was my last day. It was a Friday. And I was like, that was the paycheck cut off for the following 2 weeks. And I was like, this is the perfect time, because at that point I just had enough. And that day she was just really being disrespectful and like rude because of something that she did, honestly. But she wanted to like blame everyone else about it. And she was like, dang, they're cussing us out, essentially. And so I was just like, I really don't, I'm not a child. You don't have to talk to me that way. I would have appreciated if you could treat us like adults. You know what I mean? And she was highly offended by that. So she ended up firing me, but it was my last day anyway. So it really didn't matter. I literally had packed all my things that day. And so I didn't have to go up to the office and clean out anything. I didn't have to pick anything up or nothing. I literally dropped my keys off the following, I think it might have been the same day. And I was like, that's it for me. And then she called and she was like, oh, don't come back, you're fired. And I was like, I already planned on quitting, baby girl. Don't you worry. I had no intent on coming back.
Bro, I feel that. I wanted to quit so many times. I never actually ended up quitting my job. I ended up moving to working from home, which is the only reason I even still work there. Because I'm telling you, I was on my wits end, and I think my manager knew it. I had stopped speaking to them totally. I mean, some of them I had never had a conversation with ever, but I hadn't spoken to my manager seriously in like 3 months. Like, I would still go there, but I like couldn't stomach him and any of the people around him. So I was just getting to my end. I was finished wrapping up Clout, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get money. I don't care. I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't keep coming in here and being around this level of toxicity and like hostility every day. Like, how they do it, I don't know. But
I can't.
Yeah, it's exhausting, and it's like, your body starts to you start to like have physical signs of that stuff. I was waking up in the middle of the night being terrified of, or not terrified, but like paranoid about going back into the office, about being around the people there. And I'm like, I don't know how they sit in that. To this day, I do not know how they sat in that, unless they just don't see any other way or don't care. They call it like thick skin, but I think that's BS. I don't think it's just thick skin. I think you have to have a level of, I don't care about any other, you have to have a level of lack of empathy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just thick skin.
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah, that's how the lady I worked with too, she was like, you should just have to deal with it. Like, nope, you shouldn't have to deal with that. Like, that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
So that is the wrong idea.
I think showing up every day for a consistent amount of time is having thick skin.
Oh, exactly. And dealing with that crap is thick skin.
Exactly.
And not saying anything for that long, that's thick skin. So you got me sadly mistaken, my friend.
Exactly. It's like thick skin is not just, chopping it up and saying all kinds of like horrible things to people, or saying, just off the cuff stuff to people. It's not just that. It's thick skin is being able to weather the storm. And a lot of people can't weather the storm. A lot of them like sit in those jobs and like just act out, just lash out when something gets too difficult or something they don't like. You know what I mean? Thick skin is having the ability to be mature and handle it properly. So
super sad that we're still dealing with this in 2021.
Yeah. Well, I think about like how our parents, like, they just sat in these jobs for I don't know how long dealing with this stuff. And I'm like, no wonder they end up with like heart attacks and stuff at 45 and all that. Because I'm like, ain't no way you sit in the job day after day for however long doing these menial tasks, and you're dealing with that kind of culture, like, especially as Black people, especially as Black women, like, you're always at the end of some like crack, some joke, something in those spaces. So when they, it wears on you. It's like you go somewhere every day and you can't just be at least like uplifted or celebrated. You got to like defend constantly. That's exhausting.
1,000%. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. 1,000%.
So yeah, clearly you can tell we're not fans of corporate culture.
Not really. Not at all.
And it's it doesn't have to be that way. It's people choose to make those spaces toxic for other people.
100%, yeah. Yeah, corporate America doesn't have to be hard, or working in corporate America, but it really is rooted out of like, to me, I made up a new saying, chaos. I personally think chaos is rooted in selfishness. And that's the idea of corporate America. Greed, which is rooted in selfishness, whoever wants to be more wealthy, or this person wants more power, more authority, or this person wants, to be, for example, in my case with this manager, she wants to be this new manager that's coming in and like is creating all of this change. But in order for you to create change, you have to have those who are your employees, which you are only as good as your weakest link. They have to be able to get to do that. You know what I mean? You can't just come in and implement something and think that it's only going to go your way. That's not how that works. Exactly. So, but like for that example, that's rooted in you want this to be successful for you to look good and I guess go on and do your life. But that's not how that creates chaos and chaoticness that is not going to work. So,
something I realized too is a lot of people are really invested in hierarchies. And they're really
Mm-hmm.
invested in the idea that someone's here and someone's below me, and then someone's below that, and someone's below that. Like, there, a lot of people are really invested in that idea, and it's weird to me because I'm like, true leaders, people who truly have power, realize that equity for all people is where you get your most power.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's the root of corporate America, so that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I know the people at my job, they like took pride in being, quote, a-holes. They like took pride in knowing that people disliked them. And that was another form of a weird thing to me because I was like, I've never been around this many people who are not only okay with being disliked, but like celebrate it and really are like prideful of the fact that, you know, these customers call and curse you out daily. Like, yeah, we're tough because we curse them out too. Like, what? I'm like, I've never sat around a group of people who were happy to be considered a-holes. I don't know if that's a man thing or whatever that's celebrated in their culture, but I was like, they were like okay with people recognizing them as a-holes and people disliking them. That's weird.
What?
You say?
Why is that a badge of honor?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you're okay, you know, and people not wanting to be around you, people, you know, customers calling and saying, I'm never talking to XYZ again. If I'm dealing with your company, I can't talk to XYZ because so-and-so's a snake. That kind of stuff. I'm like, you take pride in being called a snake and a problem. I'm like, I don't know what level of low self-esteem y'all have or
but
whatever.
It's low.
It's got to be pretty low for you to take pride in being hated by people. Like, because that means you know that there's nothing to like about you. There's like something that like there's something really effed up about that. Like people who take pride in being hated. That's weird to me.
I agree. I think that's very strange. Why would you want to be hated? I just don't, for the life of me, understand that.
I don't get that either. I mean, some people will just not like you because you're like doing you, but people who genuinely are like, they're okay with being hated and are like, yeah, being hated is like the badge of honor. No, like
it's not.
It's not like the you know, you don't have to be likable to everyone, but I would like most people to say, you know what, she was a good person who did her best to be a good soul and put out the best. Maybe not everybody liked her, or maybe she didn't always get it right, but her intention was always to do well and do good. You know what I mean? I don't want someone to be like, so and so's intention was never good. Like that's weird to me. Like people who only can survive in negative spaces. Like something's wrong with that. And I know some people right now, unfortunately, who only really survive in negative spaces because negative spaces is the only place they can get attention.
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of people like that actually. Most probably.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's like you know you have nothing positive to contribute, so you stick with the negative and you just lash out with negativity because that's the only time people pay attention to you.
And beyond like contribution, some people want that for attention.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and that's draining, let's be honest.
It's draining because it's like every time you come up in conversation, it's an argument. Otherwise, nobody's talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Weird.
It's weird. And it's like, there's definitely something deeper going on in there, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yep. But it's not my job to develop that, okay?
Exactly. It's nobody else's
So we're not going to make it my job.
Exactly. It's nobody else's job to help you do that. You know, I mean, besides, you know, if you got a therapist, you got a support group, a space that's appropriate to do that, yes. But just random people you meet or friends or people who don't have the qualifications, that's not, you don't go dump that responsibility on them. It's not, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I have another question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you think that, because I know like mental health is a huge thing right now. Do you think mental health plays a factor in whether or not someone thinks you are responsible for developing their character, or whether or not someone has the ability to be aware of their character if they're suffering from mental illnesses?
Yeah, I think it definitely can affect it because, you know, mental health issues alter your entire perspective of everything. So I could
Absolutely.
see somebody who has a serious mental health issue really um, not going to the appropriate sources to look for help, but relying on maybe those around them for help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Agreed. Yeah. So I found this definition. It's called anosognosia. Anosognosia.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the idea that people with mental illnesses can be self-aware of an imbalance. So, which I was really confused on that because, like, if you're suffering from a mental illness, I was under the assumption that you may not be aware that you're suffering from a mental illness just because you have to have a level of self-awareness that you may not have with the mental illness. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's not even it's not really self-awareness. It's like they lack insight. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they don't really know where to even begin to even be self-aware. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it may be that they don't see anything abnormal. You know what I mean? Like that. Like they think their mind is fine because they're only in the mind of their mind, which is already abnormal, quote unquote, according to society. So they don't see it as abnormal until someone makes it known for them.
It's like, have you seen the movie The Matrix?
I've never watched the whole thing.
Never watched it. We gotta watch it one time. But basically, they have this thing where it's called red pill, blue pill, and he wakes up from this like simulation. The main character, I think his name's Neo or something. So he takes either a red pill or blue pill. I don't know. Don't quote me. I know people. It's a big movie. I know I'm saying it wrong. Whatever. He takes one of the pills, red or blue, something like that. And then he wakes up and he realizes the whole time while he was asleep, basically, he was in a simulation. And he thought the simulation was real. He lived his entire life being like, all right, like when we go to Chick-fil-A, this is real. This is reality. I'm eating this chicken sandwich. But then, then someone comes along and is like, you take this red pill and you realize none of that existed. That's what I think about when I think about agnosia. It's like they're in a simulation where they can see nothing else because they don't even know there's anything else but their own, the way they think in a mentally ill world.
Yeah. What if they're the normal ones and we're the ones that are mentally ill and or in the simulation?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Maybe. Now, okay, that's not an excuse to say that y'all don't need to develop y'all character because that's not what I'm saying. Y'all need to develop. Okay.
Yes.
Self-awareness is key at that. So that is not what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Yes. So that's what I think about anosognosia.
Yeah, it's an interesting word. Interesting word. But yeah. But I mean, I think also too with that definition, they are aware within themselves, which is from the outside looking in is a lack of self-awareness, right? But they're only aware of what is going on in their brain and what is relative to them, which is quote unquote normal, I believe.
Exactly. And sounds like they're in denial. That's what they say. A big thing is that people who are like in denial of their mental illness, because they just don't see it as a mental illness. Like that is how they
think.
That's how they think.
Yeah. Which that's not really denial if that's the case. Like denial is when you are aware and then you're able to have the discernment to be like, oh, that's not right.
Yeah,
so
but they're saying
this is like
outside of them, we see it as they're just denying. Because we see two sides.
For sure. Yeah. Very true. So I have another question for you. Do you think the idea that, or not the idea, but do you think social media influences people's character by, having this digital identity versus this realistic identity and certain people portraying those two realities differently? Does that influence a lack of character development?
I think it definitely can. I mean, we know social media and its impact on our culture now has been around us for at least the last 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years.
Easily,
even the
yeah.
early beginnings of social media. So I think we're becoming very aware of what a social media culture looks like. And I think it's easy for people to manipulate that culture and use it basically to create an identity. You can create all kinds of identities on the internet. And we've seen that, like, that's what catfishing means,
Yeah.
creating a digital identity, which is different than reality. And so it having that digital identity can keep you from creating sustainable character development in the real world because you're so attached to that digital identity. And that's like that show, like we were saying, Catfish. Like, a lot of the issue is like when they show up to these people's houses and they're not the like 5'10", 130-pound supermodel that they portrayed themselves to be, and we see they're like 5'2", 200 pounds, and nothing wrong with that dynamic, but they're portraying something, projecting something. So there's a lack of character development in that because they're obviously not okay with how they look or what their lives are now. So they project this digital identity. And it's showing, and then when the people show up and are calling them on it, they're like, you're not standing in who you actually are, what you actually are. We see that they have a very clear lack of character development there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. This conversation definitely makes me think about, I don't think you've watched it, but there's a TV show called Euphoria. It's pretty popular. It has Zendaya in it. And, for a while I was like, I'm not getting on the hype. Like, I refuse to watch this show. But it's not so much of a social media thing, but it definitely shows character development, which is easier to see in a TV show because that's what a TV show does. It develops the character over time and blah, blah, blah. But it's really realistic how they go through the development of Rue, which is the main character, which is played by Zendaya, and how she, like, even the mental stuff that's going on inside of her head is very realistic. And I think it could apply to a lot of adults, even though it's based at a different time point in the character's life. But really great show, I think. It's very risque, but really great show. Definitely shows development as far as a character is concerned in a TV show, and it can apply to real life. So watch that show if you haven't. Good one.
Yeah, everybody's been hyping it up. I haven't watched it yet, but people have been hyping it up.
Yeah, I really wasn't going to watch it because everybody was hyping it up. But it actually really is a good show. Like, I felt like I even learned a lot of things that I could apply to. It is not like exact tools, but it's like, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that. Or I never saw certain things that happened in her life that can easily translate to someone else's life as that. And so, it's just like that internalized trauma kind of thing that keeps you from developing into a good human being.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely could see that. I think that's what I've been hearing about the show too, is that it's so much about like Rue's character like evolving, or I guess attempting to evolve, and like the struggles that she goes through. So I think that could be a really good, a good show to watch if you are looking at something that's more about like mental health, emotional health, character development.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's actually, to go back to, social media, I actually recently completed work. Well, I don't know if it's recently, but I completed work on a film called Clout, and it's actually linked in all the descriptions below. But the entire film is about an influencer's evolution and de-evolution, right? So it's all about that conflict. Really, the tension in the film is about character development. Seriously, like, it's about how she evolved. Like I was saying, how she rises in status, but also falls in morality at the same time. So, I didn't know we were going to be doing this podcast, but when I was thinking about writing that character, I was thinking, how people in the digital social media space, how there's usually a lack of character development that begins to show itself as people get more money, more status, more resources, right? Because now everything that was unhealed, everything that was never discussed, now it has a bigger platform to show itself, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, the film's not out yet, but if you're interested, I definitely recommend looking at the trailer. It's on my Instagram, as well as I believe it's on YouTube, but and we have a Facebook page too. But that's what Clout's totally about, and I definitely I think it has an important message that I really think a lot of people will understand, especially given this new age of social media and the rise of like the influencer.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's also another thing that I like researched about this episode. I didn't know this, but I could see it's very true. I don't know if Courtney wants to talk about this, but she's been dealing with some stuff in her personal life, and this made me think about some of this, the stuff that could apply. So apparently, there's strategies for self-presentation. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but I mean, since we did
It makes
research
sense.
on it, yeah,
it definitely makes sense. So, okay, the goal of let's start at the bottom. The goal of self-promotion. So this person is presenting themselves in a means of promoting themselves is to create respect by persuading others that they are competent. So this person would be like, oh, well, I'm a great person. You should be my friend, in order to promote themselves and make themselves look better than what they actually are. Have you come into contact with anyone like that before?
You know what? I don't know if it's directly self-promotion, but I think definitely people trying to persuade you that they are competent, even if they clearly lack competency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I've definitely come into contact with a lot of people. In corporate America, I feel like that's everybody, honestly. So, unfortunately, when if your actions are not lining up with that, it's like you're obviously going to know.
Exactly.
So it's always confusing to me.
It's very easy to tell. It's like, you say this one thing, but you clearly don't do it. So.
Yeah, like there is no follow up behind that or action behind that. So it's just like, okay.
Exactly.
And so it's like you said, it's
makes
very
you side
easy to tell.
Yeah, it makes you side eye them harder because you're so gung ho about trying to prove your competency, and then you don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the goal of supplification. I think that's how you say that. And that is to create pity by indicating to others that you are helpless and needy. What do you think about that one? Have you been anyone?
I recently had witnessed somebody like that. Just like you said, in personal life. And this person is, attempting to weaponize the police in that way and come off as damsel in distress, which is
it's sad. It's
concerning.
Psycho.
concerning.
That's like, man. I have an aunt that's like that. Ugh, she is that
helpless.
That is her. Yeah, she's always around when she needs something. But the second you need something, you're a piece of ish.
Exactly.
So, but she'll definitely. I think that's how she pulls people in for sure. She definitely tries to do the pity thing, like, oh my god, I'm just so helpless. So, okay. So the next one is the goal of exemplification, and this is to create guilt by showing that you are a better person than the other person. That's Anthony.
Yeah,
1000%. If you don't know, that's a sperm donor, but that's him.
The thing about this, though, in all of these really is once you know that this is what this person's doing, they have no power. It's like, you can't guilt me if there's nothing I feel guilty about.
Yep.
Like, you can't make me feel bad about something I don't feel bad about. Like, that's where the buck stops. It's like, you can, that's how you can call these people on their behavior quickly. It's because you're like, if I know this is what you're doing, this is a tactic, then I'm going to call it a tactic. And you can't get to me. So,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's where that level of self-awareness comes in. You know what I mean? If I'm self-aware and I know what I'm guilty of or what I'm not guilty of, you cannot make me feel some way that I do not feel. I already dealt with that. That's gone.
Exactly.
So if you deal with it,
Go ahead.
You're good. I was gonna say if you deal with it, no one else can guilt you into anything. No one else can make you feel guilty for anything.
Exactly. And it's like and that the end part of that sentence showing that you are a better person than the other. And it's like, if I feel good about me, I feel like I'm walking in my purpose, I'm moving in my lane.
Exactly.
Now make me feel bad about what I'm doing, what I know I'm supposed to be doing, and how I'm doing
it. Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
you know?
1000% agree. All right, so the next one is goal of intimidation. Is you create fear by showing that you can be aggressive.
Ooh, I met a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
I think the majority of the people I meet try the intimidation as aggressive. Well, but when I know people who have an issue, they try that like aggression thing. Or at least I'll say the people at my job, they definitely tried that aggression thing of like, I'll be aggressive and attempting to like bully you into something or whatever. And again, it goes back to, I have total control and autonomy over my body, my actions, my behavior, my responses to things. So whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. You're not changing anything. Like,
it don't matter.
Because all of these are really just ways people are trying to gain some sort of control over another human being.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, nobody can control another human being. I don't care what dire circumstances you're in. If I don't allow it, it's not happening.
Agreed.
That's true. So,
Agreed.
if you also don't get anything in this message, realize that you have the power over your own self, your own life, your own thoughts, your own responses. You have
you and you only.
You and you only. So if somebody is attempting these things, it does not have to work. And it's because you can very clearly be like, no. Seriously. Or like you can tell them, you don't have that kind of power over me. You don't.
And that's when those boundaries come in, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
If you, make that boundary that, hey, I'm not going to allow you to guilt me into anything. I'm not going to allow you to pressure me into anything. You will not be persuading me. I don't feel bad for you because I see your actions or something else, which you don't even have to verbally say boundaries. Those can be boundaries that me personally, I watched a video on TikTok, and boundaries are what you enforce. If you're asking someone else to do something, that is a request. So boundaries are all within you. And you only. So, and that boundary puts a red flag right there. You will not be penetrating anything that's over here.
And I mean, thank God we live in a time now where there aren't things like, there isn't like an institution like slavery where, people are property and all that. Because I'm like, everybody has total control and autonomy over their own body, right? Yeah. So it's even really easier to set boundaries now. You don't have to do anything in this life you do not want to do. Seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I'm going to say that totally in the sense that like there are things that you might not want to do that are like necessary in order to move you along in life. Like you might not want to do said job, but it can help you get XYZ, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Or you have to work in order to pay for food or whatever. But reality is like when it comes down to like your, emotional health, your mental health, your choices, that's you.
1000%.
Like there's no one has to, even whatever consequences will come out of that, and sometimes there are some pretty heavy consequences. I'm not saying that's not true too, but we have the power of agency, which is the power of choice over our own bodies and the power to act. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Yes, you do.
So,
yep.
Yeah, you always have that. And I just stress that to people more because I'm like, that really knowing that and being aware that saves your life sometimes. You got a situation sometimes because people who are invested in trying to control or manipulate others, they are looking for people who are relaxing their boundaries. Yeah, people who are vulnerable, people whose boundaries, who don't understand fully that they have that agency and that power. They're looking for people who are lax because that's easier to take advantage of. Like one reason I know for a fact that something even more serious didn't happen with harassment at my job is because I just wasn't going for it. You don't come over, like, you don't have the power to change me. If I got to come in here and be silent every day and totally ignore you every day, I'm choosing to show up, I'm choosing to engage with you or not, and I choose not to. I'm choosing what's coming in and out of my my space and my responses. You don't have power over that. You know what I mean? Like that's the level you have to get to with people.
Yeah.
And watch.
And you know, even if you can't get to that level, you just have to find a way to enforce boundaries that work for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at my job, you know, I can't necessarily not talk to certain people because I have to work with them every day. Mm-hmm. So, you know, for me, it's a matter of creating that boundary and sticking to my boundary, period. There is no fluctuation on that boundary. And if there is a fluctuation on that boundary, it's when I am ready to fluctuate that boundary. You know what I mean? Especially if it's not in my role. So nobody can force you to do something they do not want you to do.
Or that you don't want to do.
Or that's what I mean. That you don't want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here advocating that you should go into your job and not speak to people. I'm not saying that, okay? Because that's actually on the extreme of things. I did that because I felt like that was necessary so that the harassment didn't continue. Or try to quell it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The individuals that were interacting with you weren't even supposed to be interacting with you. You know what I mean? So like,
there were people who didn't have anything really to do with what I was doing, really at all.
Yeah. So you not talking to them, that was perfectly, you know.
Yeah, like, that was within reason, actually. In my position, because I was a writer. So like, really, I really needed to be alone and do my own thing. You know, it was when other people were stepping inside to my space for trying to get something. Trying to create some sort of, I guess, engagement or relationship. And I was just like, no, I don't have to engage with you. I have power over my own body, my own responses. And if I don't want to, you need to go back to your desk. You know what I mean? And leave people alone. Like, and people get frustrated about that, but do it enough, they'll leave you alone because they'll realize they're talking to a wall.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll get more frustrated about that. Believe me.
Oh, yeah. We've seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the last one of the self-preservation strategies, which I'm probably going to butcher this word. English isn't my forte, but it's goal of ingratiation. I guess that's how you say that.
Ingratiation.
I don't know. Ingratiation. Okay. Yeah. Courtney got it. And that is to create liking by using flattery or charm. That's a narcissist, but I've seen that one a lot. I
feel like 1 and 2 is tied together for a narcissist.
You think? Like I think all of them are, honestly.
Yeah, you're right. A narcissist will use all of them.
They will use every last one of them. But I think a lot of narcissists, especially like your covert, well, I mean, honestly, they all try to flatter you, you know, by like doing flashy things and, you know, buying you this, that, and the other. That's why I was like, this one right here is a selling point for me because they're very like, they just kind of like love bomb you, you know what I mean? And then it's just like ripped away and then they start their bull. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else you want to share today, Courtney?
I think just to wrap it up, like we were saying earlier in the episode before we started getting into our personal stories, I think, you know, we are not in the business of character development. I know for me, I'm not in the business of character development.
Me either.
Yeah, like some people, you know, you can help to evolve. And if they're making a sincere effort to change because they know they need the help, they know they need the whatever, and you really are invested in that person and you want to help them change. And I say, be a supporter of them and help them, but you got to set that boundary to know when is their character development becoming toxic to me, you know? And a lot of times,
becoming like a job for you. It should not be a job.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a job. It's like, if anything, if someone's taking on the mantle of developing a character and evolving, it's their responsibility to go do that. It's not.
Yeah, it should be your child.
You don't have to take it on. Yeah, you don't have to take it on. And that's why we call it like not in the business of character development, is because I know personally for me where I'm at in my life, I just am pretty much totally shut down to that because I'm like, I don't have the interest, I don't have the time, I don't have the concern, you know,
nor the tools and the resources,
to help somebody become a better version of themselves. I'm just not investing in it. I'm not going to do it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I don't have any children. I don't have a relationship, and I keep those things out of my life purposely. So I'm not doing this. Yeah. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to express that clearly to people because people will try. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
especially if they see that you like yourself and you've done the work. They like try, you know, to like be a part of that. But you have to, you know, again, set another boundary and be like, that I'm not going there with you, and it's not my
Yeah, I also think
responsibility.
people unknowingly try to get you to do that as well. A lot of
Yeah,
people are
sometimes
not
it
aware.
is. Yeah, sometimes it is unknowingly because they just see like, oh well, this person seems to have it together. Let me try to like befriend them or try to
Mm-hmm.
be whatever around them.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
like it's not. Again, you got to watch out for that kind of stuff too.
Or those that are like envious of that, and so they're just trying to like wreck you, do
Oh,
anything to
exactly.
get in your way to like
To
stop you
stop,
from being
yeah,
great, basically. So
yeah. I've actually, oddly enough, like I'm not even that far along in my filmmaking career, but I've had people come along who have been in that category of just trying to attach to you because they see you trying to do something. So they attach to you thinking they're going to get something. And then, you know, as soon as I just peep their behavior, then I'll just be like, this is the end of the relationship. You have to go develop your character elsewhere. It won't be with me.
seriously, exactly. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that wraps up our episode for today. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of Keiko Talks.
Yeah. That was a good talk. Hopefully you learned something you can take away and, you know, implement in your personal life.
For sure. Yeah, make sure you're creating, you know, sticking to your boundaries, enforcing your boundaries. And yeah, so we hope to see you guys in the next episode.
Yep. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Don't forget, we've got a brand new episode of Rewind coming for you guys next week. So make sure you check the description box below to see the film we're going to be discussing.